Ethan Miller never missed work. He showed up early, left late, answered emails faster than anyone else on the team. From the outside, his life looked solid, respectable, controlled, a good job, a nice house, a wife who smiled in public, kids who called him Dad with pride. No one would have guessed that every night after the house went quiet, Ethan poured himself another drink. Just one, then another, then one more to help him sleep. He told himself it wasn't a problem. "I'm not an alcoholic," he'd say quietly. "I don't miss work. I don't drink in the morning. I don't lose control." That was the lie, because control wasn't the absence of damage. It was just how long he managed to hide it. Ethan's father had been a drinker. Not loud, not violent, just distant. A man who sat in silence with a glass in his hand, staring at nothing while life passed him by. Ethan had sworn he'd be different. "I'll never be like him," he used to say. And technically, he wasn't. He had a career, a family, a reputation. But at night, when the stress caught up with him, when the pressure of providing and performing became too heavy, he reached for the same escape. The bottle didn't judge, didn't argue, didn't expect anything from him. It just numbed the noise. Claire noticed before anyone else. She noticed the smell on his breath, masked with gum, the way his mood shifted without warning, the nights he fell asleep on the couch with the TV still on. "You okay?" she asked once. "Just tired," he replied. That answer became routine. Tired, busy, stressed, always something, never the truth. The kids noticed too. Not the drinking, the absence, the way he was physically present but emotionally gone, the way his patience disappeared faster, the way his laughter felt forced. One night his son asked, "Dad, why are you always mad?" Ethan froze. "I'm not mad," he snapped. The boy nodded quietly and walked away. That hurt more than Ethan expected. So he poured another drink. It wasn't that Ethan wanted to destroy his life. He was trying to survive it. Deadlines, bills, expectations, the silent fear of failing everyone who depended on him. Alcohol didn't feel dangerous. It felt necessary. Until the morning he woke up in his car. Engine off. Head pounding. Phone buzzing endlessly. He didn't remember driving there. His heart raced as he checked the time. 7:46 a.m. He was late. That had never happened before. He drove to work in a panic, hands shaking, rehearsing excuses. But the damage was already done. His boss pulled him aside. "You okay? You seem off lately." Ethan smiled. "I'm fine." That smile had saved him for years. But this time, it didn't land. The real collapse didn't come at work. It came at home. Claire stood in the kitchen one evening, arms crossed, eyes red. "I found the bottles," she said quietly. The room went silent. Ethan opened his mouth to explain, to justify, to minimize, to lie. But for the first time, Nothing came out, because deep down he knew this wasn't about drinking anymore. It was about who he was becoming, and he didn't like the man staring back at him. Claire's voice trembled. "I don't recognize you," she said, "and I'm scared of where this is going." That night, Ethan sat alone in the dark. No TV, no music, no drink, just the weight of everything he'd been running from. And for the first time in years, a thought crossed his mind. What if I'm not in control at all? He didn't know it yet, but that question would be the beginning of everything changing. Ethan didn't stop drinking after that night. He told himself he would. He promised he'd cut back. He said it was just a rough season, but promises made in fear don't last long. He switched brands, bought smaller bottles, found better hiding places. A bottle in the garage, one in his work bag, another behind old paint cans no one ever touched. He wasn't drinking to get drunk. He was drinking to feel normal. At work, the cracks grew wider. Meetings blurred together. Names slipped from his memory. Small mistakes began piling up. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to raise eyebrows. His boss stopped asking if he was okay. Now he just watched. Ethan felt it. That quiet shift when trust starts eroding. So he worked harder, stayed later, drank more at night to shut his brain off. It was a cycle he couldn't see clearly anymore. At home, Claire became quieter. Not angry, not yelling, just tired. She stopped asking questions because she already knew the answers. The kids noticed the tension. Dinner conversations shortened. Laughter disappeared. The house felt heavier. One evening, his daughter asked Claire in a whisper she thought Ethan couldn't hear, "Is Daddy sick?" Ethan pretended not to notice. That night, he drank alone in the garage, sitting on the cold concrete floor, staring at the bottle in his hands. He thought about his father, the silence, the distance, the way alcohol slowly replaced presence. "I'm not him," Ethan muttered. But the words felt thin. The incident happened on a Saturday. Ethan had promised to take the kids to a soccer game. He meant it. He really did. But Friday night turned into just one drink, which turned into 4. Saturday morning arrived with a pounding headache and a fog he couldn't shake. Claire stood by the door, keys in hand. "They're waiting," she said quietly. Ethan tried to stand. The room spun. "I'll be right there," he said, sitting back down. Minutes passed. Then more. Finally, Claire came back inside. The kids were already in the car. Her eyes were wet. "They're asking why you're not coming." Ethan swallowed. "Tell them I don't feel well." Claire nodded slowly. "I will," she said. "But they're starting to understand more than you think." When she left, Ethan slammed his fist into the couch. Not out of rage, out of shame. That afternoon he drank again. Not because he wanted to, because he didn't know what else to do with the guilt. Alcohol had become his way of pressing pause on the parts of life he didn't know how to face. The breaking point came faster than he expected. One night, driving home from a work dinner, Ethan misjudged a turn. The tires hit the curb hard. The jolt snapped him awake instantly. He pulled over, heart racing, hand shaking. No damage. No police. No witnesses. Just him. And the terrifying realization that things could have ended very differently. He sat there in the dark, engine off, breathing heavily. "If anyone knew," he whispered. That thought followed him home. Claire was waiting when he walked in. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't accuse. She simply said, "I can't do this anymore." Ethan froze. "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm watching you disappear," she said, tears streaming down her face. "And I don't know how to save you." "You don't need to save me," he snapped. "I'm fine." The lie sounded ridiculous even to him. Claire shook her head. "No, Ethan. You're not." She took a deep breath. "I'm scared for you. And I'm scared for our kids." That word, kids, hit harder than anything else. Ethan's voice cracked. "I don't want to be like this." "Then get help," she pleaded. He looked away. Help meant admitting he wasn't in control. And that terrified him. That night, Ethan slept on the couch. Not because Claire asked him to. Because he felt unworthy of the bed they once shared. He stared at the ceiling, sober for once, mind racing. For the first time, he didn't think about work. He thought about his children. Their faces. Their voices. Their quiet disappointment. A question echoed in his mind. If I keep going like this, what will they remember about me? The answer scared him more than losing his job, more than losing his marriage, more than losing everything else. And deep down, another truth began to surface. He wasn't drinking to relax anymore. He was drinking to escape himself. Ethan didn't drink that night. Not because he was healed, but because the weight in his chest was heavier than the craving. The house was silent. Too silent. Claire had taken the kids to her sister's for the weekend. She said they all needed space. Space. That word echoed through the empty rooms. Ethan walked through the house slowly, noticing things he hadn't paid attention to in years. The height marks on the doorframe where the kids had grown. The family photos on the wall. Smiles frozen in moments that felt distant now. The smell of a home that used to feel safe. He sat on the edge of the bed and buried his face in his hands. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he whispered. But intention didn't change reality. The call came Monday morning. Human Resources. His boss's voice was calm, almost apologetic. "We need to talk." Ethan knew. He just didn't want to hear it. They didn't accuse him of drinking on the job. They didn't need to. Performance issues. Missed deadlines. Concerns about reliability. A formal warning. One more incident and he'd be gone. He nodded through the meeting, barely hearing the words. When it was over, he sat alone in his car, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. For the first time, work no longer felt like his anchor. It felt like another thing slipping through his fingers. That night he drank, harder than usual, not to relax, not to unwind, but to silence the fear screaming in his head. He drank until the edges blurred, until his thoughts slowed, until he didn't feel like a failure anymore. He woke up on the floor, phone buzzing beside him. Claire. He stared at the screen, heart pounding. He didn't answer. He couldn't. The next morning, his daughter didn't go to school. Claire had kept her home. She'd been sick to her stomach. The teacher asked questions. Claire didn't know what to say. That afternoon, Ethan finally showed up at Claire's sister's house. He looked exhausted, unshaven, hollow. Claire opened the door and froze. "You can't come here like this," she said quietly. "I just want to see the kids." "They're scared," she replied. "And I don't blame them." That sentence broke something inside him. "I'm their father." "Yes," Claire said. "But right now you're not acting like one." Ethan felt his throat close. "I don't know how to stop," he admitted. The words fell out before he could catch them. Claire's eyes softened, but only slightly. "Then you need help," she said. "Real help. Not promises." He nodded. "I'll fix it." She shook her head. "No, you won't. Not like this." The door closed gently in his face, and Ethan stood there alone on the porch, feeling smaller than he ever had. That night, he drove aimlessly. No destination, no plan. Just roads and headlights and thoughts he couldn't outrun. He pulled into a grocery store parking lot and sat there, engine running, bottle in his cup holder. He stared at it. The thing that had promised relief. The thing that had taken everything. His hands shook as he picked it up. And then something unexpected happened. He started crying. Not quietly. Not politely. He sobbed like a man who had finally run out of strength. "I can't do this anymore," he whispered. "I'm losing everything." The bottle slipped from his hand and rolled onto the passenger seat. For the first time, he didn't reach for it again. He rested his forehead against the steering wheel, breath hitching, and a thought surfaced, one he hadn't considered in years. "God, if you're real, I need help." The words scared him. He hadn't prayed since childhood, didn't know if anyone was listening, but he said them anyway, because he had nowhere else to turn. He drove home sober, not confident, not hopeful, just empty. When he walked into the house, he collapsed onto the couch. The silence felt unbearable. That night, he didn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, eyes burning, mind racing. For the first time, the problem wasn't alcohol. It was the truth. He was powerless. And deep down, he knew something else too. If something didn't change soon, he would lose his family, and maybe himself. That realization didn't bring comfort, but it brought clarity. And clarity, as painful as it was the beginning of surrender. Ethan didn't wake up hopeful the next morning. He woke up tired. Not the kind of tired sleep fixes. The kind that sits in your bones and whispers that you're losing the fight. The house felt wrong without the kids. Every sound echoed. Every room reminded him of what he was pushing away. He stood in the kitchen staring at the counter where Claire used to sit with her coffee. The bottle was still in the trash. He hadn't touched it since the night before. That scared him almost as much as the drinking had. Because without alcohol, there was nothing numbing the noise. He went to work late. Again. His boss didn't comment. That silence was worse than any warning. During lunch, Ethan found himself sitting alone in his car, scrolling aimlessly on his phone. He didn't know what he was looking for. Then an ad caught his eye. Not flashy, not loud, just simple text on a dark background. Struggling with addiction? You don't have to fight alone. Below it, a local support group meets tonight. Ethan stared at the screen. He locked the phone, unlocked it again. Read it one more time. I'm not like those people, he muttered. But the words felt hollow, because he was like them, just better at hiding it. That evening, instead of going home, Ethan drove to the address. A small community building. Old brick walls. Soft light spilling through the windows. He sat in the car for 10 full minutes. Hands gripping the wheel. Heart pounding. He almost left. But then he thought about his daughter asking if he was sick. His son waiting by the door for a game he never attended. Claire's face when she said she couldn't do this anymore. He opened the door and stepped inside. The room wasn't what he expected. No podium. No spotlight. No pressure. Just a circle of folding chairs and people who looked normal, tired, worn, honest. A man in his late 40s stood up and smiled gently. Glad you came, he said. You can just listen if you want. Ethan nodded and sat down. The stories started. A woman who lost custody of her kids. A man who hid his drinking behind promotions and paychecks. Someone who said, I thought I was in control, until I wasn't. Each story felt uncomfortably familiar. When it was Ethan's turn, he shook his head. I'm just here to listen, he said quickly. That's okay, the man replied. You're still welcome. That word hit him harder than he expected. Welcome. After the meeting, as people slowly left, the man approached Ethan. I'm Mark, he said. I help lead the group. Ethan nodded. Ethan. Mark studied him for a moment. Not judging, just seeing. You're carrying a lot, Mark said quietly. Ethan scoffed. You don't even know me. Mark smiled gently. I know that look. I had it once. They sat down again. Silence filled the space between them. Finally, Ethan spoke. I'm not a bad person, he said defensively. I just messed up. Mark nodded. Most people who sit in that chair aren't bad, he said. They're tired. That cracked something. Ethan swallowed. I don't know how I got here. Mark leaned forward. Neither did I. But I know how I got out. Ethan hesitated. How? Mark didn't answer immediately. He looked around the empty room, then back at Ethan. "I stopped pretending I could fix myself," he said. "And I let Jesus do what I couldn't." Ethan stiffened. "There it is," he muttered. "Religion." Mark didn't flinch. "I thought the same thing," he said calmly. "But this isn't about religion. It's about surrender." Ethan shook his head. "I don't even know if I believe in God." Mark nodded. "That's okay. I didn't either when I walked in here. I just knew I was losing everything." Ethan's chest tightened. "That's where I am," he whispered. Mark held his gaze. "Then you're closer than you think." That night, Ethan didn't drink. Not because it was easy, but because something inside him had shifted. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor. For the first time, he didn't feel strong enough to pretend anymore. He whispered into the quiet room, "I don't know how to fix this." The words felt heavier than anything he'd said before, and strangely, they also felt true. For the first time in years, Ethan wasn't trying to control the outcome. He was finally admitting he needed help. And that admission, terrifying as it was, opened a door he didn't even know existed. Ethan didn't sleep much that night. Not because he wanted a drink, but because his mind wouldn't stop racing. For the first time in years, he wasn't numbing anything. Every regret surfaced. Every lie replayed. Every missed moment stood in front of him demanding to be acknowledged. He lay on his back, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the house. And something inside him broke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Quietly. He sat up on the edge of the bed and buried his face in his hands. "I don't know how to do this," he whispered. The room didn't respond. No sign. No voice. Just silence. But instead of feeling abandoned, the silence felt patient. Waiting. The next evening, Ethan went back to the group. He told himself he was just curious. But curiosity doesn't make your hands shake like that. When he walked in, Mark nodded at him from across the room. "Glad you came back," he said. Ethan sat down and stared at the floor. The meeting began like the last one. Stories. Honesty. Pain without masks. But this time, when Mark asked if anyone wanted to share, Ethan's hand lifted before his mind could stop it. "I think I'm an alcoholic," he said quietly. The words hung in the air. No gasps. No judgment. Just understanding. Ethan swallowed. "I kept telling myself I was in control. That I was different. That it wasn't that bad." His voice cracked. "But I'm losing my family. And I don't know how to stop." Tears blurred his vision. "I don't recognize myself anymore." Mark leaned forward. "That's usually the moment change becomes possible," he said gently. Ethan shook his head. "I don't want to be like this. I don't want my kids remembering me this way." Silence filled the room again. Then Mark spoke softly. "Ethan, have you ever told Jesus that?" Ethan laughed bitterly. "I don't even know how to pray." Mark nodded. "That's okay. Honest prayers don't sound religious." Ethan wiped his face with his sleeve. What if I ask for help and nothing happens? Mark met his eyes. Then you'll still be exactly where you are now. But what if something does happen? That question followed Ethan home. Later that night, alone in the house, Ethan sat on the living room floor. No bottle, no distraction, just him and the weight of everything he'd avoided. He stared at the wall for a long time. Then he spoke, barely above a whisper. Jesus, I don't know if you're real. The words felt dangerous. But if you are, I can't do this anymore. His chest tightened. I tried to be strong. I tried to fix it. I tried to control it. He paused, swallowing hard. I failed. Tears slid down his face. I'm losing my family. I'm losing myself. And I don't know how to stop. His shoulders shook. So if you're listening, I need you. Not tomorrow. Not when I'm better. Right now. He didn't expect anything. No lightning. No vision. But something changed. Not outside him. Inside. The tightness in his chest loosened. His breathing slowed. The panic that lived under his skin quieted. It wasn't euphoria. It was peace. A kind he had never felt before. Deep, steady, unexplainable. He sat there for a long time, tears still falling, but no longer from despair. For the first time, he wasn't alone with his failure. Someone was carrying it with him. The next morning, Ethan woke up clear-headed. Not healed, not fixed, but grounded. He walked to the kitchen and stared at the trash can, the empty space where the bottle had been. And instead of fear, he felt resolve. He picked up his phone and made a call he had avoided for years. I need help, he said. And this time he meant it. That afternoon, he drove to Claire's sister's house. Not to beg. Not to promise, just to tell the truth. Claire opened the door cautiously. I'm not here to argue, Ethan said quickly, or to make excuses. She studied him. I asked Jesus for help, he continued quietly, because I can't fix this alone. Her eyes filled with tears. I'm starting treatment. I'm going back to the group. I'm not asking you to trust me right now. He swallowed. I just want you to know. I'm done pretending. Claire didn't respond right away. She stepped aside. Come in, she said softly. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a beginning. And for Ethan, that was everything. Recovery wasn't dramatic. It was slow, uncomfortable, humbling. Ethan didn't wake up suddenly hating alcohol. Some days were harder than others. Some nights the craving returned, not loud but persistent, like a whisper reminding him how easy it would be to numb the pain again. But now, he had something he never had before. Help, accountability, and a reason not to run. The first weeks were the hardest. Group meetings, honest conversations, admitting things he had buried for years. He learned something that surprised him. Alcohol had never been the real problem. It was fear, pressure, the need to be enough. Drinking had just been the way he coped, and for the first time, instead of escaping those feelings, he faced them. With trembling hands, with uncomfortable silence, with prayer that sounded more like conversation than religion. Jesus, I don't want to run today. Jesus, help me be present. Jesus, don't let me go back. And little by little, the days began to stack. One sober day, then another, then a week, then a month. Claire didn't rush forgiveness. She watched. She listened. She paid attention to the small things. Ethan waking up early instead of late. Showing up when he said he would. Listening without defending himself. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, she sat beside him on the couch. "You're different," she said quietly. He nodded. "I'm not fixed," he replied. "But I'm honest now." That mattered. Trust didn't return overnight, but it began to rebuild, not on promises, but on consistency. The kids noticed too, not in speeches, in moments. Ethan sitting on the floor helping with homework, attending games without excuses, laughing, not forced, not distracted. One night, his son leaned against him and said, "You don't smell like that anymore." Ethan swallowed hard. "No," he said softly. "I don't." Months passed. Ethan stayed committed. When work stress hit, he talked instead of drinking. When fear returned, he prayed instead of hiding. When shame whispered, he remembered the truth. He was no longer fighting alone. One morning, during a quiet walk, Ethan stopped and looked up at the sky. "I didn't think you'd want anything to do with me," he whispered. The thought hit him deeply. Jesus hadn't waited for him to clean up. He had met him at his worst. That changed everything. Eventually, Mark asked him something unexpected. "Would you be willing to share your story with the group?" Ethan hesitated. "I'm not an example." Mark smiled. "Exactly. You're honest." The first time he spoke, his voice shook. He didn't preach, didn't exaggerate. He told the truth. About hiding, about control, about almost losing everything. And afterward, a man pulled him aside. "I thought I was the only one," the man said quietly. Ethan shook his head. "You're not." That moment planted something new in his heart. Helping others didn't replace his past. It redeemed it. The thing that once almost destroyed him became the place where God now worked through him. Not because Ethan was strong, but because he was surrendered. One evening, months later, Ethan sat on the back porch with Claire. The kids were inside laughing. He reached for her hand. "Thank you for not giving up," he said. She squeezed his fingers. "Thank you for finally letting go." They sat in silence for a moment. Peaceful. Real. Ethan looked around, at his home, his family, his life. Not perfect, but present. Whole. And for the first time, he understood something clearly. Alcohol had promised relief, but only Jesus had given him freedom. He didn't lose his life that night in the parking lot. He lost the illusion that he could save himself. And that loss was the beginning of everything being restored.